You ever stop and think, why bother questioning all the weird beliefs out there? Ghosts, psychics, miracle cures. If it gives someone comfort, what's the actual harm? Well, that's exactly what we're going to get into today. Let's dive in.
And this isn't some new idea. We're talking over 2,000 years ago. Socrates hit us with this one. It's really the perfect way to kick things off. Because questioning what we believe, well, that's really about examining our own lives and the kind of world we're building. And look, this is not some niche topic that only a few people are into. An incredible 76% of people hold at least one paranormal belief. So whether we're talking about you, your family, your friends, this is a conversation that pretty much involves all of us. But, okay, before we get into the whole what's the harm side of things, let's start with an idea that might seem a little backwards. Some claims that were once considered totally off the wall actually turned out to be true. And that possibility is exactly why we need to think critically, not just dismiss everything.
I mean, just take the wild story of meteors. For centuries, right, people would see rocks fall from the sky and think, whoa, a message from God. Then the Age of Enlightenment rolls around, and this brilliant chemist, Antoine Lavoisier, says, nope, impossible. Even Thomas Jefferson laughed at the idea. Museums literally threw their meteorites in the trash. And now? Well, now we know the impossible was true all along.
And it's not a one-off thing either. We see a really similar story with hypnosis. It all started as mesmerism, this big, flashy show with animal magnetism and whatnot. A fancy commission with Benjamin Franklin on it called it mere imagination. And the irony? Today, we call it hypnosis, and it's a legitimate clinical tool. And its power is often chalked up to, you guessed it, the healing power of imagination.
So this brings us to a really crucial question. If just one of these crazy-sounding claims is actually true, it could change, well, everything. But how do we possibly sort through all the noise? How do we put our energy into the things that might be the next meteorites instead of just chasing every ghost story?
And that brings us to the very heart of this explainer, the responsibility that comes with believing something. Because when we just stop thinking critically, the fallout can be massive. This is where we have to ask, seriously, what's the harm?
And this harm isn't just one thing. You can really break it down into four main areas. You've got these huge catastrophic costs to all of society, the real dangers of misguided alternative medicine, the risk of religious beliefs becoming superficial or aggressive, and, of course, the simple act of just shutting down critical thinking itself. Let's start with the most dramatic one, the cost to society.
Okay, first up, the societal cost. For 300 years in Europe, a single, unexamined belief, pushed along by books like the Malleus Maleficarum or The Witch's Hammer, led to the deaths of around 200,000 people, mostly women, all accused of witchcraft. This wasn't some small-town panic. It was a continent-wide disaster built on belief without a shred of evidence.
And lest you think this was just some old European problem, America's own Salem witch trials ended with 20 people killed, and their confessions often gotten through torture. It's just a grim, stark reminder of where unchecked fear and belief can take us.
Now, I know it's easy to look at something like the witch trials and think, okay, but that was a long time ago. We're not superstitious like that anymore. But these ways of thinking, they haven't disappeared. They've just changed shape. Let's look at how they show up today.
Let's talk about something you've definitely heard of, complementary and alternative medicine, or CAM. This is a massive umbrella term, right? It covers everything from things with real scientific backing, like yoga or certain supplements, all the way over to things based purely on paranormal claims, like faith healing or therapeutic touch.
And just look at this number, 75%. 3 out of every 4 people think these alternative approaches are just as good as traditional medicine. That shows you just how deeply these ideas have settled into the mainstream.
So what's the big deal? Well, the danger isn't that you're taking a vitamin. The danger is that this whole giant alternative category lumps the safe stuff in with the really risky, unproven stuff. So someone might have a great experience with something like massage therapy, and that makes them feel way more comfortable trying a risky paranormal cure for something really serious. It's a total medical minefield.
So, how do we spot this kind of thinking, in others? And, let's be honest, in ourselves? Well, there's a really great framework for this called the 5 Great Paths of Closed-mindedness. Think of it as your field guide for figuring out when a conversation has just gone off the rails.
All right, let's run through them. First, you've got the path of the turtle. That's just hiding in your shell, refusing to talk. Then there's the king or queen, the person who thinks the rules of logic simply don't apply to them.
Number 3 is the magical wonderland, this idea that truth is whatever you want it to be. Fourth is the paranormal escape hatch, making up special rules so your belief can never be tested. And last, number 5, the cop-out, insisting we have to give equal time to ideas that have zero evidence. Let's zoom in on number 3 for a second, the magical wonderland. You hear this idea all the time, right? Well, that's my truth. Here's a perfect example from a nurse named Dola, who says her belief in healing touch is valid because, well, different cultures just create different realities.
But this whole my truth idea kind of falls apart when you look at it closely. For one, it defeats itself. If you can believe something into being true, can I just believe it into being false? It's also a total logical contradiction. You're basically saying the only absolute truth is that there are no absolute truths. Huh? And finally, it's a complete science stopper. Any experiment that doesn't work out can just be shrugged off, which means you can never, ever learn anything new.
Okay, so we've talked about the dangers and the flawed logic. Now let's turn the camera around and look at ourselves. What do our belief patterns actually look like when you study them? The results might surprise you.
You know how most polls work, right? They give you a simple choice. Do you believe? Yes or no. But that's super misleading because it forces everyone into just 2 boxes. The research we're looking at here asked a much smarter question. To what extent do you believe? On a scale from not at all the way to very much.
And when you do that, the results are fascinating. It shows that belief isn't just an on-off switch. For something like herbal medicine, yeah, belief is pretty high. But for stuff like astrology or ESP, most people are actually right in the middle. They're not true believers, they're more like open-minded questioners. Then you get topics like ghosts, where people are totally split, big groups at both ends. And finally, you see real skepticism with flying saucers, where a full 50% of people are firm non-believers.
So we end up right back where we started. The harm isn't automatically in believing something strange. The real, lasting harm might just be in forgetting to ask that one simple, incredibly powerful question that drives all human progress and keeps us safe from our own worst ideas. Why?